The enhanced Shadow Priest Druid, never mind. They wanna extend the game very late on the side of Spanish Armada, no matter what they play, pretty much.
Lots of interesting stuff in the arena right now too. Zuniaki, it looks like, will be on the Holy Priest as well. Skill Cap Red versus the Spanish Armada. 63% of you think Skill Cap Red's going to take it. We find out now.
The first time we're going to see a Holy Priest in Battle for Azeroth as Zuniaki looks to showcase it. He was expecting a Shadow Priest, and the one thing that Holy Priest is quite effective against is damage over time effects spread onto multiple targets. So this is a smart decision by Zuniaki as a bit of a soft counter to the expected Shadow Priest. We see Atkins actually getting started on. They found him in stealth. They're trying to initiate a surprise attack. Atkins jumps to Tharkum to try to get to safety. A Skill Capped Red likely switch their targeting now over to MZW. Looking to pull an Iron Bark from Atkins as soon as possible.
Yeah, so I was talking to a few of the competitors over the course of the week because there were so many jungle cleaves in last week's bracket. I was like, what are you going to do when you see those same jungle cleaves again this week? And the kind of theme I got was that any enhancement shaman restoration druid composition is kind of what they consider the counter. You can bring in kind of any third to that, something tanky like a Moonkin, or in this case a Shadow Priest, obviously perfect fit for Spanish Armada. And I actually really like this composition choice from them. Meanwhile, they're playing to survive, right? The enhancement's going to be spamming out those heals. You can see he's trying to stabilize Atkins right now. You bring the restoration druid for the incarnation to counter the incarnation on Kassadin. It's just a solid overall comp. But of course, Zuniaki on the Holy Priest, bringing in a little bit of mitigation for that Shadow Priest damage.
I really like the strategy that Skill Capped Red are employing in this matchup, bouncing between the Restoration Druid and the Shaman, making it difficult for him to pick where does he want his Life Bloom. Should I keep it on myself or should I keep it on my Shaman? And Skill Capped Red keep that as a surprise. They can catch a target off guard without it, and without that, you're more likely to force cooldowns. Unfortunately, their momentum has started to fall off now as the Spanish Armada have a heavy mana lead over Zuniaki. That attempted soft counter not really paying out. In Legion, Holy Priest mana was arguably the best mana of any healer, but in this position, Atkins with a massive lead, Zuniaki falling behind, forced to trade heavy defensive cooldowns now as well, with no trinkets on the entire team here shortly. It's actually looking better and better for the Spanish Armada.
This is a really solid composition coming out of Spanish Armada. They're looking a lot better than last week already. This is playing to the playstyle we saw from them last week, where they wanted to kind of draw out the game for that longer game. Of course, we all know that enhancement shamans were buffed since last week. A little bit of extra damage will definitely help them going into dampening, and they already had that utility, the insane off healing, the grounding totems, the wind shears, all of that, which is already part of the toolkit. Fantastic Vakins on the Resto Druid, who, I mean, he's kind of the person they'd love to be able to swap onto, but those off heals will really pay out for Spanish.
Zuniaki was hoping as his Holy Priest that he'd be able to deal with this split pressure on his team, but he's falling behind more and more as they use the silence and the stun crowd control chain with heavy burst damage onto Adam Rex, looking to pull Aspect of the Turtle as soon as possible, but not finding it. In the meantime, let's see what Skill Capped Red have really got done. They've worked through the Astral Shift of MZW. It's an important cooldown. They've worked through now Atkins Iron Bark. So there is actually no defense for 6 more seconds for MZW. Tharkum is the one that needs to save him. Adam Rex still getting bursted, and he's just hovering at low HP. Zuniaki's mana is looking worse and worse. We haven't even stepped foot into Dampening just yet. He's definitely going to need to try and find some opportunities to drink and regenerate mana, or unless Skill Capped Red just fall at this point. Adam Rex is to trade Aspect of the Turtle, barely stays alive. Spanish Armada looking better and better. Their defensive cooldowns are now rotating and available. They've got crowd control for Zuniaki. His entire team is still at low health. He's hiding behind the pillar. Tharkum moves in. He fades to avoid the Psychic Screen, but he just can't deal with the damage. A well-timed Cyclone on the Guardian denies the effectiveness. Adam Rex forced to trinket out of the Cyclone in desperation to recover.
Yeah, he's really struggling, and the win conditions for Skill Capped Red just don't seem to be there right now. They're struggling to get crowd control or damage over onto Atkins on that Restoration Druid, which is, of course, what you want to be doing as the jungle cleave. You want to either attack that healer or land your full freezing traps over onto him. They haven't really been able to do either because of this unrelenting pressure coming out of Spanish Armada. And Zuniaki, he brings the Holy Priest, and yes, it's great for kind of reducing some of the incoming damage. It's a good kind of area of effect healer, but it doesn't bring its own damage. The Discipline Priest, the reason you bring it is for that extra aggression, for that extra damage that Holy Priest doesn't provide, and Skill Capped Red just aren't getting anything going in this game, Sid.
They catch Atkins out of form and force his Trinket Barskin Tree of Life. That was 3 cooldowns for 1, and then they freezing trap him on it. This is a nice play from Skill Capped Red, but Spanish Armada have basically a bulletproof composition. There's so much support. The triple healer composition has been in the meta throughout this entire season, and now bringing in the Shadow Priest, Priest, which is just a wall. You can't even target him. The Enhancement Shaman, where if he's not crowd controlled, the healing surges just pump people back to full health. And then the Restoration Druid with powerful low cooldowns like the Iron Bark can almost infinitely rotate through them. And the Spanish Armada have created a composition that Skill Cap Red need a miracle to penetrate.
I mean, that was a really nice swap from Skill Cap Red. I like what they're starting to do now. They forced out this Incarnation using Cassidy's. They got the Trinket. Now they've got the Bark Skin out the way. They need to get another connection though. Zuniaki actually drank to full during that time as well, which is obviously huge for the team of Skill Cap Red. That full mana bar will mean that Zuniaki will be able to elongate the game a lot longer if he can keep his team alive here. They need to stabilize. Guardian used there to do that. Cassidy in a little bit of trouble, uses up the stuns. I'd love to see him try and get over to Atkins. Atkins actually leaping in there, tasting blood in the water, looking for the kill on Cassidy. If they can recover this though, Atkins is definitely going to be a good kill target as Dampening starts to stack here, Sid.
One thing I want to credit Skill Capped Red for is they were the only jungle to take a game off XRB to the moon in what was arguably one of the hardest counters we've seen, and this might even be more difficult of a counter comp. Skill Capped Red still just play for any possible win condition despite the odds being stacked against them. They keep going, trying their best, and they often manage to make it work. So if there is a team that could take down such a well-crafted composition, it would be Skill Capped Red. Zuniaki making his return in this season. Unfortunately, too late to get enough points to get to BlizzCon, but he's setting up momentum moving into next year to be a real threat in these tournaments.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that he's done such a good job of, I think, is we've seen these jungle cleaves that can play the aggressive style, and we're very happy with that. But Skill Capped Red also have shown that they're adapting to this more defensive playstyle where they let Zuniaki get the drinks, even playing the Holy Priest here. This is more of a attrition type of game, with the jungle cleave of course still having that high rate of single target damage and crowd control. You can see Cassidy, he's putting out a lot more heals. We credited him a lot last cup on how defensively he played. He's dropping very low right now though, playing behind the pillar. And this is the other thing, the Shadow Priest and Enhance, not only do they bring such great defense, they also have fantastic offense. And when it comes to Dampening, the Holy Priest might just struggle single target healing.
I mean, let's look at this. Zuniaki already drank to full. Cassidy's on the run. He could easily just fall in this final crowd control chain. Guardian saves him. Atkins gets swapped to, but it's unlikely he goes down. He's got support from two members. Both teams survive throughout that, but Skill Capped Red got the worst of that exchange. They're heavily far behind, and as I was trying to say, Zuniaki got a full mana drink. He regenerated maximum. That means he can continue healing for what we would have thought is a much longer time, but he's already in a worse condition mana-wise than Atkins, who may be drinking at this point. Adam Rex is trying to flare him. He doesn't get the drink. That was critical for Skill Capped Red to stay alive in this fight, but it's still not looking too good for them. Aspect of the Turtle has been forced off of basically nothing. As Dampening ramps up higher and higher, it becomes infinitely more difficult for either side. At this point, it's still anyone's match, but I would give it maybe a 10% chance that Skill Capped Red can pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, Spanish Armada definitely take the lead in this one. Adam Rex popping his offensives, but Cassidy gets chunked down by M.
It's kind of like on the in-game ladder. You don't really face, the Azeroths and the Enhancement Shamans until you're like 2-4, 2-5. That's when that's where they start by default, No, I'm just kidding. They're staying back, and whoever overextends on the side of the Spanish Armada, they try to kidney shot him and do a bunch of damage. If Skill Capped Red plays that playstyle, I think they have a long game win condition here.
And that was something that Zico said throughout last weekend as well, really putting a magnifying glass on how Zuniaki decides to play the game, even if it is on disc. A lot of different options here. The question is, will Skill Capped Red be able to tie up this series with their new comp?
So the perfect start here for Skill Capped Red is a sap on Atkins, which is why they're playing very patient and hiding behind the pillar. Mystic's just moving around, hoping that he finds him, but now Atkins is out of stealth and in combat, so maybe cheap shot, maybe Geralt. They might even attack the Restoration Druid. It is entirely possible for Assassination Rogue Feral Druid to all in the healer. That would not play to the late game, and it doesn't appear to be the case. It looks like they're just multi-dotting, so they're attacking two targets at once. Mystic opened up on Atkins, got Rupture. Now Cassidy is going over to get his Rake and his Rip, and then they switch over to MZW to do the same to him, applying pressure to two targets, which is a very good strategy against a Restoration Druid. It's up to the matter of if they can keep it up. If they overextend on Atkins and they get pressured and they die, that's the risk they take with this strategy. But otherwise, I don't know if they have enough damage to really win.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Assassination Rogue, you can almost just leave him on a healer by himself or leave him on target and he will create solo pressure. So definitely these split strategies will be good. This is what they're going for, right? The Shadow Step into the kidney shot over on the healer, just do big damage, already have those bleeds applied from Cassidy, and that's the way you generate pressure. Then the healer has to top himself off, trade off those life blooms like you say, and then they can swap back to the Enhancement Shaman and kind of force him to use his healing. It caused that spread pressure. Now we see the blind over onto Atkins. That's going to force the Trinket. Big damage coming out from the Incarnation of Cassidy, and already a strong start for Skill Cap.
That swap to Atkins at the start, they actually interrupted Atkins on the Shadow Step, so he couldn't use his Bark Skin. It's just unfortunate that for the team of Skill Cap Red that MZW and Tharkum peeled for him perfectly. Double Cap Totem on the DPS with a Psychic Scream on Zuniaki. They took all 3 members out of the game, which is really good defensive teamwork from the Spanish Armada. Atkins was in the most vulnerable position you can really be as a Restoration Druid, and his teammates carried him through that mistake. Now he's falling behind, though, as they get a lot of pressure on MZW. Bit of a wasted smoke bomb there by Mystic. He got a bit over eager. Maybe not, though. The damage is still following up. If they can keep a little bit more crowd control on Atkins, doesn't look like they've got it. Iron Bark is going to save the day here, and MZW will recover, I believe. Skill Cap Red are showing a lot more signs of life. I like this composition a lot more than their starting lineup, and if they get one more swap to Atkins, he's got no defense. MZW's got no defense, but Mystic, if he was more patient on the smoke bomb, that was an easy win condition in 20 seconds, so Mystic's over-eager smoke bomb is losing them an opportunity.
Essentially, yeah, he did do a good job, though, of swapping over with the cheap shot, baiting out that Bark Skin from Atkins. Now they do have those 2 openings, like you said, Sid. Good preemptive bear form from Atkins, going to reduce the incoming damage here, but still a lot. Dark Archangel from Zuniaki on that Discipline Priest, providing his entire team with 15% more damage in the situation there for a little bit. Now they're swapping it back over to MZW, though, and once again, this is the problem with swapping to the Restoration Druid, is both those hybrids are going to be able to provide a ton of healing when they need to. They have the life grip. Now they swap over to MZW, though. Obviously we like this because it means the Enhancement Shaman isn't healing during those stuns. Cassidy on Atkins causing him a problem as well. Iron Bark forced out, and even the mana game is looking pretty good for Skill Cap Red. They're just doing such a good job of causing problems for Atkins. He's struggling to keep up.
I mean, they know Spanish Armada want to play for a late game. They have to win on mana. They need to contend in that regard, but they catch Atkins in a stun behind the pillar. Nice Psychic Scream by Zuniaki as well, removing multiple members at the same time as they manage to now pull Barkskin and potentially more pressure. Cassidy's actually going all in, trying to stay aggressive. They're not really punishing Cassidy, but they are going after Mystic. He can't stay on target. He's instead going to switch, catching MZW in a stun with Vendetta. Massive pressure now. Atkins is expending an insane amount of mana to recover through this setup by Skill Capped Red, all on the back of their strategy, attacking 2 targets and making it difficult for Atkins to predict who they're going to go after. He gets caught out of bear form much more frequently as he is right now, and Skill Capped Red have a good composition, a good strategy. Everything is in their favor. It's very likely they take this game, Adrian.
Yeah, they're looking fantastic. Skill Cap Red have looked on fire since last week, and they haven't shown any signs of letting up this week either. Blind comes out into a kick over on Atkins. One of the things I want to call out as well, Zuniaki's actually running Schism, which is a huge increase of damage on that Discipline Priest when he applies that, so watch for him casting that. Then he'll often go for a Penance, maybe a couple of smites, really build up massive damage with that 60% modifier. Tharkum now even taking a little bit as Mystic's just trying to apply his bleeds, apply his poisons to as many different targets as possible. He catches Atkins again, Sid, out of form, but once again a good life grip from Tharkum.
Atkins is so lucky to have MZW and Tharkum on his team. Every time he gets caught in these positions, his team is always there to save him, but he's slowly but surely running out of mana. This Tree of Life is easily going to tap the rest of his mana. He's not even into Dampening. Zuniaki has a massive lead. That Schism choice is great against the triple healer. There's no real significant threat of single target damage with the Shadow Priest on the team. If they had a Warrior, the Schism becomes a bit more risky, but Zuniaki can get away and do maximum damage against this composition, and he's really showcasing it quite effectively here as Atkins is burning the rest of his mana at the end of this Tree of Life. I'm not sure how much longer they can keep this up. We've just stepped foot into Dampening.
We just stepped foot into Dampening. Of course, that major defensive cooldown for the Shadow Priest, the Void Shift, that life swap will be kind of the last line of defense here. Atkins really low on mana, but the thing is, the way the Skill Cap Red are playing, if they can keep up the spread pressure, it's very effective against the life swap because you can only use it on one target, and it's a 5-minute cooldown. We see Atkins once again caught out of form, Barkskin, another life grip. I think that's just a wild charge actually from Atkins there, so good job by him, but now MZW's in trouble.
Ooh, that mind
see
control.
low mind controls, everyone dying on Spanish Armada, and this brick wall composition is being smashed to pieces by Skill Capped.
Tharkum needs to activate that Vampiric Embrace. He's got it available. It would allow him to bounce his team back, but he's not pulling the trigger on it. He's waiting far too long. This is a mistake. It has to be a mistake. His team is going to go down if he's not careful. Void Shift, that allows him to save Atkins, but you said the split pressure. MZW is still low. Atkins has no mana. Zuniaki's letting it rip. Schism Prism gets interrupted in the last second. MZW doing whatever he can to stay in this fight. Mystic makes the swap. Tharkum activates the Vampiric Embrace, but it's far too late. He could have used that 10 seconds ago and saved his team. Now they've burned through those big defensive lineups, and they're still on the back foot.
And he used his Void Form there. Tharkum does not have the Void Enchanty, the 20% damage injection. Now we see a kidney shot onto Atkins. They may well kill the Shadow Priest here. Do not go into Void Form when you are playing against the Dark Archangel. Smoke Bomb comes out, and the swap to Tharkum.
What he did was he void shifted Atkins to save him. Then he activated his Vampiric Embrace. Vampiric Embrace heals everybody based off of how much damage he does. It turns out that Void Eruption does a lot of damage, so therefore it does a lot of healing, and everyone on his team was on 20%. So
have looked so incredibly good on. Or will we see the Spanish Armada strike back on Tolvaron Arena?
I think something else to take into consideration is Mystic and that composition worked really well. Why didn't Skillcap Red blind lock the same composition? Well, they're probably more afraid of MZW and their team switching Hong in for the Mage, potentially getting kited by that Frost Mage. So Skillcap Red went in blind in this because they didn't have the pick advantage, and they felt Jungle could achieve the same success with a similar strategy, even though the composition with the Rogue looked like it worked so much better. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm really curious as well. I think one of the things that, you have to be really scared of the Frost Mage when you play double melee. So I definitely respect Skullcap Red going blind with their jungle cleave. Maybe if they lose this one, they would consider locking blind Mystic going into game 5 should they get there. But one of the things I really liked as Zika called out is just Zuniaki swapping over to the Discipline Priest. There's a ton of damage. They swap over to Tharkum at the start, and this is something you should often see against Shadow Priest teams. At the very start of the game, they don't build up their Insanity Bar. You can really punish that as Skillcap Red will at the start of this game, just bursting him before he even gets defensive cooldown necessarily, especially if you don't spec into the Deep Shadow, I think it's called, which reduces it so much. But he just doesn't get his Insanity up. You should be putting out your Mindbender very early as a Shadow Priest. You need to get that out to get your Insanity fast, and it's just such a great opener.
MZW.
Yeah, the Tremor.
Honestly, and we're going to see what Spanish Armada has up their sleeve, because if this hook point isn't a map that they can use to their full advantage here, we're going to see Skillcap Red sink the Armada.
I mean, that last game was unfortunate for Tharkum, and MZW trying to make a preemptive play got punished hard. So Skillcap Red taking any openings that they can find, which is why I would probably label them as the best jungle currently in Europe. Despite these disadvantaged matchups, they still find ways to victory, which is exactly what you need to be capable of. This is a BlizzCon quality team right now, and moving into next year, they're definitely going to be a threat. Let's see if they can close this series out moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fair statement, I think, to say that this has been the best performing jungle throughout Battle for Azeroth in Europe, certainly. They've just been so adept. They took games off XRB last tournament. They took many mirrors, and they've just been looking fantastic in this tournament as well. Even taking down this tanky composition. They're actually starting the game up on MZW this time, just kind of playing that mana game. You can see Zuniaki, he hasn't really pushed for Fizz on the healer. He actually went for cross crowd control on the DPS last time to deny the Master Spell on the first freezing trap.
The nice advantage on hook point is because it's such a small distance to a pillar, you can actually line of sight the Discipline Priest a lot more easily and avoid those smites. If you can just line of sight them, then he doesn't get that effective pump of damage out. Right now, they're not really using that. They're playing out in the open. I would almost like to see Spanish Armada drag Adam Rex and Cassidy back behind the fenced wall, because right now Zuniaki's having free reign. He can attack 3 targets. He can move wherever he wants. This positioning is not looking good for Spanish Armada.
Yeah, I really like the opener coming out of Skullcap right now. They forced the Trinket out, and Atkins doesn't actually seem to be playing the tree form against the Incarnation from Cassidy, which could potentially be a big mistake, not having that cooldown to line up. It will mean he has a little bit more consistent healing throughout the game, but those late Incarnations are going to be a big win condition for Skillcaps, and now we see the triple or the double overlap of the Trinket Tremor and the Trinket from Atkins. They're going to swap over, try punish the Druid. Yeah,
and he's caught out of form. He trades Barkskin. He's got the support of the other 2 members on his team. He's going to jump to safety, but Adam Rex in hot pursuit, freezing traps him at low health. He preemptively ironbarked MZW. That was a nice read to try and kind of shore up their mistake earlier, but that mistake earlier I think is likely going to cost Void Shift. Is it enough damage to push him over the edge is now the question. He's at 10%. Tharkum, there you get the Void Shift. Forcing that so early on is a massive success for Skillcap Red.
And they're still doing damage. Zuniaki has Schism applied right now. He jukes the Shade, looking for big damage on MZW, who is still in trouble. Full freezing trap will come out momentarily here, but they don't even need it. Pure damage from Skillcap wins in the game.
The shot calling just fell apart for Spanish Armada. That was a horrible overlap of trinkets. The
year, and who who is going to be going down to the lower portion of the bracket. A lot to prove here when we return. And out of Make Feed versus the Fake Zebras, we're all tied up 1-1. Who is going to find themselves on match point? Who is going to get a little bit further into this tournament? And keep in mind, folks, we're doing a brand new thing. You have just entered in the middle of history the longest series that has ever been played in Battle for Azeroth.